Big Four Cloud Consulting, Interview Preparation. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into cloud consulting interview preparation for Big Four roles. These teams help clients migrate, modernize, and secure their cloud environments across AWS, Azure, and GCP. These questions reflect real interview expectations across Big Four. Kindly supplement with other learning material from channel. Let's begin. How do you assess an organization's cloud maturity and readiness for migration? Sample answer. I begin by understanding the current state: infrastructure, applications, data flows, and security posture. I evaluate maturity across people, processes, and technology using frameworks like AWS CAF or Azure CAF. I check skills, governance, legacy dependencies, and integration points. Finally, I identify gaps and build a readiness score so the organization knows what must improve before moving to cloud. While answering, always include maturity dimensions and readiness scoring. A client wants to choose between AWS, Azure, and GCP. How do you conduct a cloud platform selection assessment? Sample answer. I compare each platform across cost, security features, compliance support, native services, and integration with existing tools. I also consider current skill sets and long-term scalability. For example, if the client uses Microsoft ecosystem heavily, Azure may integrate best. I summarize findings in a decision matrix and recommend the platform that fits both strategic and technical needs. While answering, always include platform comparison and decision matrix. Topic. How do you perform a TCO analysis comparing on-prem versus cloud? Sample answer. I calculate current on-prem costs, hardware, data centers, maintenance, backups, and personnel. Then I estimate cloud compute, storage, networking, monitoring, and licensing costs. I include hidden costs like migration effort and training. A TCO model helps the client see savings over 3 to 5 years. While answering, always include cost categories and comparison period. A business plans to migrate legacy applications. How do you decide between rehost, refactor, replatform, or rebuild? Sample answer. I assess application complexity, architecture quality, performance issues, and dependencies. If speed matters, rehost works. If functionality must improve, refactor or rebuild makes sense. I balance cost, risk, and long-term value to choose the right strategy. While answering, always include decision factors and trade-offs. How do you design a cloud landing zone for a multi-account or multi-subscription setup? Sample answer. I define account structure, networking, identity, security baselines, and logging. I design guardrails, policies, encryption standards, and monitoring. A landing zone ensures every workload is deployed consistently and securely. While answering, always include structure and guardrails. A client requires high data security. How do you design secure cloud architecture aligned with CIS, SOC 2, or ISO 27001? Sample answer. I implement identity controls, network segmentation, encryption in transit and at rest, logging, CIEM integration, and vulnerability management. I map each control to CIS or ISO benchmarks and document compliance. While answering, always include control mapping and security layers. How do you structure a cloud migration roadmap for a multi-phase rollout? Sample answer. I start with discovery, then build pilot migrations, followed by phased waves for each application. I include timelines, dependencies, cutover plans, and rollback options. A clear roadmap ensures predictable migration. While answering, always include phases and sequencing. A business wants to adopt microservices. How do you evaluate modernization readiness? Sample answer. I assess current monolithic architecture, modularity, APIs, deployment pipelines, and team skills. I check whether DevOps, CI/CD, and container platforms exist. Readiness shows how quickly microservices can scale. While answering, always include architecture plus DevOps readiness. How do you design identity and access management, IAM models for cloud environments? Sample answer. I implement least privilege roles, fine-grained policies, MFA, and conditional access. I separate admin accounts, enforce logging, and integrate IAM with enterprise identity solutions. While answering, always include least privilege and integration. A company has heavy database workloads. How do you choose between managed DB services versus self-managed VMs? Sample answer. I evaluate performance, maintenance needs, scaling patterns, and compliance. Managed services like RDS or Cloud SQL reduce admin work, while self-managed VMs give more control. I choose the option that meets operational and regulatory requirements. While answering, always include control versus convenience. How do you evaluate network architecture including VPC, VNet, subnets, firewalls, VPN, and Direct Connect Express Route? Sample answer. I review routing rules, subnets, NAT setups, security groups, gateway configuration, and firewall logic. I test latency, bandwidth, and failover capacity. Good network design ensures secure, reliable access. While answering, always include routing plus security layers. A client faces excessive cloud spending. How do you design a FinOps cost optimization model? Sample answer. I review resource utilization, reserved instances, autoscaling, storage tiers, and idle workloads. I create dashboards and cost guardrails. I establish monthly reviews so teams stay accountable. While answering, always include monitoring and optimization levers. How do you assess compliance requirements like GDPR, HIPAA, RBI, or NPCI before cloud adoption? Sample answer. I map data categories, residency rules, encryption needs, and audit requirements. I check whether the cloud provider offers compliant services. I design policies and logging to satisfy regulators. While answering, always include data classification controls. A business wants to implement hybrid cloud. How do you design integration between on-prem and cloud? Sample answer. I evaluate connectivity options like VPN and Direct Connect. I design identity federation, data sync, monitoring, and security alignment. Hybrid works only when both sides follow consistent standards. While answering, always include connectivity plus consistency. Next. How do you evaluate disaster recovery, DR, and business continuity architecture on cloud? Sample answer. I assess RTO and RPO needs, choose multi-AZ or multi-region strategies, and design backup schedules. I test failover and document recovery steps. While answering, always include RTO, RPO, and failover testing. A company wants to adopt containers. How do you choose between Kubernetes, ECS, AKS, or GKE? Sample answer. I consider workload complexity, orchestration needs, portability, and team skills. Kubernetes offers flexibility, while ECS or AKS simplify operations. I match platform to business goals. While answering, always include workload plus skills. How do you structure cloud governance, including policies, tagging, monitoring, and cost guardrails? Sample answer. I define mandatory tags, policy controls, IAM roles, backup policies, and monitoring dashboards. Governance ensures consistent deployment across teams. While answering, always include policies plus tagging. A business faces inconsistent deployments. How do you design CI/CD pipelines on cloud? Sample answer. I automate build, test, and deploy stages. I use cloud tools like Code Pipeline, GitHub Actions, or Azure DevOps. I enforce versioning, approvals, and rollback plans. While answering, always include automation plus controls. How do you evaluate and implement infrastructure as code, IAC, using Terraform, CloudFormation, or Bicep? Sample answer. I define reusable modules, enforce Git-based versioning, and automate deployments through pipelines. IAC brings consistency and repeatability. While answering, always include modules, plus version control. A company wants to modernize analytics. How do you evaluate cloud data architecture options like Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, Redshift, or Synapse? Sample answer. I analyze data volume, transformation needs, concurrency, cost, and integration. For example, BigQuery suits high-scale analytics, while Snowflake fits multi-cloud needs. I compare performance and cost. While answering, always include comparison and fit. How do you design an event-driven architecture on cloud? Sample answer. I use event buses, message queues, and serverless compute. I design producers, consumers, retries, and dead letter queues. Event-driven systems improve scalability. While answering, always include event flow. A client wants to use serverless architecture. How do you assess suitable workloads? Sample answer. I look for short-running, stateless, and event-driven processes. I evaluate latency, concurrency, and cost to confirm serverless benefits. While answering, always include workload characteristics. How do you evaluate cloud-native security tools like GuardDuty, Sentinel, or Security Command Center? Sample answer. I compare detection coverage, integration ability, automation, alert fatigue, and compliance mapping. I choose tools that strengthen SOC workflows. While answering, always include coverage plus integration. A company wants a zero-trust cloud strategy. How do you design it? Sample answer. I enforce continuous verification, identity-centric access, micro-segmentation, and strong device posture. I remove implicit trust and monitor activity continuously. While answering, always include identity plus segmentation. How do you assess cloud operational maturity using frameworks like AWS CAF or Azure CAF? Sample answer. I score maturity across operations, governance, security, monitoring, and reliability. I interview teams, review artifacts, and identify capability gaps. This helps build an improvement roadmap. While answering, always include capability scoring. A client wants to migrate SAP to cloud. How do you design SAP on AWS, Azure, or GCP architecture? Sample answer. I start by understanding SAP workload size, existing integrations, and required performance. I choose certified cloud instance types for SAP HANA or ECC. I design high availability using multi-AZ setups and plan backups, DR, and encryption. I include network routing for SAP interfaces and test performance before go live. While answering, always include certified instances, HADR, and integration needs. How do you conduct cloud readiness interviews with business, IT, and security teams? Sample answer. I prepare structured questionnaires covering skills, processes, compliance, integration points, and change management. I discuss pain points, expectations, and technical constraints. Interview insights help refine the migration roadmap and highlight organizational gaps early. While answering, always include structured questions and gap identification. A firm wants multi-cloud strategy. How do you design governance and interoperability? Sample answer. I define when and why multiple clouds are needed. Cost, features, or resilience. I standardize IAM, tagging, logging, and monitoring across all clouds. I design interoperability using APIs, containers, and shared networking models. The goal is consistency without creating chaos. While answering, always include standardization plus interoperability. How do you measure ROI and business benefits of cloud transformation? Sample answer. I compare pre-cloud costs with post-cloud efficiency. I quantify benefits, faster deployments, less downtime, lower infra cost, and higher scalability. I also measure revenue enablers like faster product releases. ROI shows both financial and strategic value. While answering, always include cost plus efficiency plus strategic benefit. A client faces latency issues in cloud. How do you troubleshoot network and architecture? Sample answer. I check routing, DNS, load balancers, region choice, subnet placement, and firewall rules. I review application design for chatty traffic. I test performance using tracing tools and optimize using caching, CDNs, or better regions. While answering, always include network plus application review. How do you structure a Cloud Center of Excellence, CCOE? Sample. I define roles for architecture, security, operations, DevOps, and FinOps. The CCOE sets standards, approves designs, manages governance, and trains teams. It becomes the single source of cloud best practices. While answering, always include roles plus standards. A business wants to adopt AI/ML solutions. How do you define cloud AI architecture? Sample answer. I identify data sources, design an AI platform with pipelines, feature stores, and model hosting. I choose cloud-native tools like SageMaker, Vertex, or Azure ML. I ensure security, monitoring, and scaling of models. While answering, always include pipelines plus tooling. How do you evaluate cloud data migration strategy for terabytes or petabytes of data? Sample answer. I assess network bandwidth, migration windows, data sensitivity, and required tools. I use online transfer or offline appliances like Snowball. I validate data integrity before cutover. While answering, always include transfer method plus verification. A company wants real-time data pipelines. How do you design streaming architecture using Kafka, PubSub, or Kinesis? Sample answer. I define producers, brokers, and consumers. I design partitions, scaling, retries, and dead letter queues. Real-time pipelines feed dashboards, ML models, or alerts within seconds. While answering, always include producer, broker, consumer flow. How do you verify compliance with the cloud shared responsibility model? Sample answer. I explain what the cloud provider handles: hardware, regions, and core services. Then I check what the client must manage: IAM, configurations, encryption, and patching. I verify controls through evidence and monitoring. While answering, always include provider versus customer responsibilities. A client is concerned about vendor lock-in. How do you reduce dependency through design? Sample answer. I use open source tools, containers, Kubernetes, and cloud-neutral architectures. I avoid proprietary managed services where portability matters. I design APIs and data formats that work across clouds. While answering, always include portability by design. How do you assess application readiness using cloud migration tools like AWS Migration Hub or Azure Migrate? Sample answer. I scan servers, dependencies, performance, and compatibility. Tools show whether apps are suitable for rehost, refactor, or replatform. Readiness results support roadmap planning. While answering, always include discovery plus dependency mapping. A company wants SRE practices. How do you integrate reliability engineering with cloud DevOps? Sample answer. I define SLOs, SLIs, and error budgets. I automate rollbacks, monitoring, and chaos testing. SRE blends operations with engineering to improve reliability, while answering always include SLOs plus automation. How do you design monitoring and observability using CloudWatch, Azure Monitor, Stackdriver, Datadog, or Prometheus? Sample answer. I track logs, metrics, and traces. I set alerts for thresholds and anomalies. I build dashboards for infra, application, and network layers. Observability helps diagnose issues faster. While answering, always include logs, plus metrics, plus traces. How do you manage secrets and keys using Cloud KMS and secrets managers? Sample answer. I store secrets in dedicated managers, enforce rotation, restrict access, and log every retrieval. KMS encrypts keys at scale and integrates with services. While answering, always include rotation plus access control. A business needs high availability. How do you design multi-AZ and multi-region architecture? Sample answer. I deploy workloads across multiple AZs for resilience and use multi-region failover for mission-critical apps. I replicate data, configure health checks, and automate regional failover. While answering, always include AZ plus region strategy. How do you evaluate a statewide cloud tagging and inventory strategy? Sample answer. I define mandatory tags for owner, cost center, environment, and compliance. I enforce tagging using policies and blockers. Tagging supports cost control and governance. While answering, always include tag standards plus enforcement. How do you integrate cloud with enterprise identity solutions like AD, Okta, or Ping? Sample answer. I set up federation using SAML or OAuth. I enable SSO, enforce MFA, and sync roles. Integration centralizes identity and simplifies governance. While answering, always include federation plus SSO ending. A client wants to shut down on-prem data centers. How do you plan full cloud migration? Sample answer. I assess workloads, plan migration waves, design DR, validate readiness, and build cutover steps. I coordinate network shifts, DNS changes, and data transfers. The final shutdown is done only after stable operation in cloud. While answering, always include migration waves plus cutover. How do you structure a cloud operating model for IT, business, and support functions? Sample answer. I define responsibilities across architecture, security, DevOps, FinOps, and support. I map processes for provisioning, monitoring, incident handling, and cost control. The model aligns cloud with business needs. While answering, always include roles plus processes. A company wants to adopt API-led architecture. How do you design cloud API management? Sample answer. I use gateways, throttling, authentication, and versioning policies. I expose APIs securely and monitor usage. This supports microservices and partner integrations. While answering, always include governance and security. How do you evaluate cloud-native logging, SIEM, and SOC options? Sample answer. I compare visibility, automation, correlation, and retention. I assess how tools integrate with incident response. Native SIEM options reduce complexity, but must meet compliance needs. While answering, always include visibility, integration, _. How do you design multi-tier application deployment architecture on cloud? Sample answer. I separate presentation, application, and database layers. I design load balancers, auto-scaling groups, and manage DB services. Each tier scales independently. While answering, always include tier separation plus scaling. A cloud migration project fails to meet timelines. How do you conduct root cause analysis? Sample answer. I review scope changes, dependency misses, skill gaps, and testing delays. I interview teams and analyze project metrics. I implement corrective actions like clearer wave planning or automation. While answering, always include cause, fix, structure. How do you prepare a board-level cloud transformation roadmap and business case? Sample answer. I summarize current gaps, target cloud vision, cost savings, risk reduction, and strategic benefits. I outline timelines, milestones, investments, and ROI. I present in simple language so leaders can make decisions confidently. While answering, always include vision, value, and clarity. Thank you for watching, and if you liked our video, kindly press the like button and leave us a comment. This will help us reach a wider audience. Don't forget to check the playlist for more great learning.